So moved.
Support.
Motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, the same. Passes unanimous. Move on to public comment. Public. No public. Move on to item 4, our committee items. 4A is the minutes from February 8th. Unless there are any changes, need a motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, the same. Passes unanimous. Next up, item 4B, the undersheriff, the Mavis Fire Service dispatching software.
Good morning. Before you, I have a request to purchase a software solution for all county fire services, and I believe that this board had the luxury of having some information, a presentation done at the January study session. This is going to be a component to our current computer-aided dispatching system that we already have down in 911. And as you previously saw in the presentation, basically this auto-selects a certain amount of resources for some type of event. Those resources are all pre-planned and determined by the fire departments of the respective jurisdictions, and there's a couple examples within that document. But essentially it removes a lot of the human element out of selecting what is needed, or in a lot of cases the firefighters or fire personnel may radio certain things into us that may not be the exact terminology that we use, so there'll be some questions about that. But it removes all that confusion and removes the human element. These townships have all worked together, planned together to determine what these pre-planned resources will be, and I believe that this is going to kind of revolutionize the fire service here in Jackson County, move them to at least a regional asset sharing type of system where you can have these variety of assets going to these certain events or fires and things of that nature. This will interact with our New World computer-aided dispatching system. It is a purchase through New World Components. And the Fire Chiefs Association, which is a nonprofit association, has agreed to cover a portion of the yearly maintenance costs. Now, obviously they can't commit to an exact dollar amount because they don't have a dedicated or a secure source of funding. They will cover whatever is capable within their budget. Based on the dollar threshold of this purchase, I'm asking for the Board of Commissioners' approval to move this item and purchase this item. It was reviewed by IT, and it will interact, or it is one of the components that is able to be used with our CAD system. So essentially in place, other than we need to purchase the software to make this happen, then the fire services of the respective townships will put into the system what their pre-planned resources are. They've got a lot of those things worked out already.
I'd so move the request.
Support.
No motion, support. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Passes unanimous.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 4C, Human Services. It's a restated ICMA RC governmental policy purchase plan documents from our administrator.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah, I'm reading it.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you. As part of the employment agreement with the county administrator, the county is required to have a qualified governmental money purchase plan in place. And we certainly did that when the county administrator was hired, and it's through ICMA. They are required to go to the IRS every 6 years to basically get a requalification letter, which they have done, and they received the favorable opinion letter in 2015. And so now, in order for us to keep his plan in place and keep it qualified, we need to adopt new documents, which is what was attached to your the staff report.
Thank you. Administrator Overton, please.
I would just make one comment that I looked at it and I couldn't see that it changed at all. Was there any change to anything that would?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I went through because I have to send back the adoption agreement. It's really the same information that we put in place originally, so.
Discussion or questions?
Support.
You have a motion by Elwell, support by Leitner to send this to support this, send it to the full board. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, the same. Passes unanimously.
Thank
you, Joni. Next up, we have facilities. We're going to be looking at okaying a security service contract. Welcome, Rick.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Have before you a staff report for security services at the courthouse and the North Lawn building in front of the court. What we're doing differently this time is we expanded the scope of this contract to include outfitting the security folks with tasers, and at the courthouse expanding their range of duties to patrol the parking lot on a regular basis.
Is that for the courthouse also?
That's for the courthouse.
Okay, that mean there's more people involved?
No. It'll be one of those scenarios where the two guards that are normally at the front desk will, when it's slow, go out and patrol the parking lot.
All right, thank you. Questions? Discussion? Commissioner Elwell.
Rick, just one question for me. I think I read in the document somewhere it's about 1 hour a week at the health department.
Right, that's for their after-hours clinic.
I see. Thank you.
Commissioner Alexander.
When you say parking lot, specifically, what parking lot are you talking?
The courthouse parking lot.
So,
Both.
and that 1 hour that you just,
That's for the health department's clinic that they have once a week.
is that in the evening hour?
It is.
Commissioner Elwell.
Rick, the parking lot patrol, what's prompting us to want to expand to that, if I can ask? And do we feel that we'd be taken away potentially from security in the building by having just one person there and one out roaming? And if I can throw one more question on, do they have communications back and forth, radio or otherwise?
They do have the radio contact, and what prompted this was a number of concerns from personnel that works at the courthouse. They were concerned with the transient folks going across the parking lot, and it was one of those things where I think the perception is one thing, the reality is something else. As a city resident myself, I lock my car doors when I park my vehicle. But there are some other things involved as well.
But we don't think moving one out of the parking lot occasionally is taking away from security in the building?
No, you just have the one person stationed there, and folks would just have to wait while they're being processed through. The reality of it is, with the number of cars they have on the street, I don't think that's going to happen. That's just my gut feeling.
I'll move it, and I've got one more comment.
Support.
Motion support?
Rick, the reality is also, though, that during the day when security is there, there's patrol cars in and out of that place. They park right in front of the building. They, likely don't patrol our lots, but they're certainly driving down Wesley Street both ways during business hours, so.
I agree.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, the same.
Thank you.
Good morning. Got two reports that I have submitted for discussion, and we'll go ahead and look at the dog licensing request. And I'm not seeing it here. Should I just go ahead and select it, Adam?
Is that affairs and agencies? No, I guess that's the right one.
Well, I'll go ahead and get started. As you know, I actually was asked to attend the most recent study session to discuss the dog license fee structure and change. And I think that we had questions and answers at that point, but I'll open it up again if there's any other concerns or comments or questions with regard to the request and moving this forward. And again, just to remind you, it's a fee structure change in that I'm requesting that we add a 3-year licensing option, which is not currently available. It's not a fee increase, it's just a reflection of the current fees at the 1 year, and actually we're trying to incentivize people to do the 3 years, so there is somewhat of a discount for the 3-year license. So that is what I am proposing. Any questions that I can answer?
No.
All right, so then.
Oh, do you want, I was just going to make the motion to send it on to the full board. Yep. Dan supported.
Aye. Those opposed, the same.
Very good. Thank you.
And I like the idea.
I think it's going to be well received, so I do like the idea as well.
Now we move on to your annual
The
report.
annual report, and I'm not going to read. Actually, once the board approves it, I would like to roll that out this year. That was my goal. And
Karen,
I see
can
the
I
report. Yes, please.
one more question on that?
There.
And I think Julie had asked this before. Didn't the deadline just pass for annual for that? And would there be some way to factor in credits to people that have just purchased one, or would that be too difficult to do if they want to buy a 3-year license?
So yes, Commissioner Alexander did ask that question, and when we go to implement this, after the board does approve the fee structure change, remember, you can still get the 1-year license. The whole point of doing the 3-year license is so that it coincides with the 3-year rabies vaccination. So it's not that there's not going to be a licensing available option, but we're really trying to push getting the 3-year vaccination in line with the 3-year license. So those that, and I'm one of them, I just purchased my dog license in January for my dog, so I probably will wait, and I had to get my rabies vaccination then, so I will wait the 3-year period paying the 1-year license, and then when my dog's renewal becomes available, opt to do the 3-year license at that point in time. So, but as I mentioned in the study session, I'd like to be flexible, but the whole intent is to gradually move into that rolling calendar option instead of issuing licenses each year. So that's where we are with that. Does that help clarify that?
So looking at the fee structure, I just paid $10 for each of my dogs to get them to have them licensed.
Mm-hmm.
A 3-year license is $25.
That's correct.
Okay. So in theory, let's just say their rabies shot was due to expire in the summer month.
Mm-hmm.
So they're licensed this year, and for the 2017 calendar year, it would be financially advantageous for me then to wait for the 6-month period with no license, because then in that summer month, when they got their rabies shot, then I would vaccinate them for that period of time. Or the only other option would be to pay the $10 for the 6 months and then reissue for
Yes.
the $25.
Yes,
Okay.
there is a little, when we're getting to roll this out, there is that time lag difference,
Okay.
but I would encourage those to continue to get their dog licensed in the event that they could be issued a
Trust me,
citation.
I will.
Yes.
I personally will, but
Sure.
thank you.
But as we roll this out, it does make sense to make sure that we're coordinating the 3-year licensing with the rabies vaccination. Those that have that will either make the choice to wait, if they so choose to do that, or pay the additional fee to get the 3-year licensing with the vaccination.
And so for the sake of the $10 per year or $25 for 3 years, I do appreciate that you have given that $5
Discount?
discount, right, for that service.
Right. The end goal is to have our dogs licensed within Jackson County, so that's what we're trying to promote.
Thank you.
Sure. All right, great. So hopefully you've had a chance to review this. I'm not going to go through this ad nauseum. You've seen this report. I've presented it the past 3 or 4 years. This first section, I talk about the foreclosure prevention efforts that our office did last year. This report is all about data and statistics as of 2015. So I'm not going to highlight any of those topics there. I did want to mention that last year was new in the respect that when we go out and do our field work, we last year implemented the ability to have a tablet that had a template that was on the tablet or loaded on the tablet, so that when the tax specialists were out in the field doing our personal service visits and making contact, we were able to upload or input the information on a tablet versus making the comments and updating the file manually. And this was a very nice feature that we were able to add, and it definitely increased efficiencies. So that was one new highlight that we implemented last year. Okay, I'm going to go through, here is the report out as to revenue. Our outputs. Here's a quick snapshot of the investment pool and interest earned. And again, I'm going through this real fast, but you have it in front of you. If you've got any questions, I certainly will entertain that. Here is the December 2015 portfolio, investment portfolio for year end. Those are all the holdings that we have as the county. And again, what I tend to end up highlighting is the foreclosure process and the forfeiture process. So I do want to take a minute to talk about that. Our numbers for the settlement process, which is the forfeitures, it's the newer delinquent taxes that come over to us. If you can see here on the chart, that number is going down, not only in parcels, but it's also going in dollar amount that we have to pay out to the local units. So that's a positive. I wanted to take a minute and highlight that. Here's some just general information about what the process is. It's our nice little flow chart that gives dates. It's a good visual when explaining the process to not only people that we come in contact with, but the taxpaying citizens at large. So forfeiture, and these are the new taxes that come to us every March 1st, uncollected from the local unit. You can see that from 2014, 2015, we had a decrease, and that is another positive. So that number, 2,295, is the total parcels that turned over to us March 1st, 2015. And that has decreased as compared to 2014. Here's the dollar breakout for that. And then here I go into further detail about the foreclosure prevention efforts that we did. Gave you some numbers and statistics through there. This information is also going to be available on the Treasurer's website under Public Reports, so this is available for public consumption as well. Our foreclosure process in 2015 was a little bit different. We ended up with a total of 230 properties, which is down from the year previous. That is also a positive. I think it says here number of parcels was 29 less than the 2014 cycle, so that's good. But what is of a note, last year we haven't had in years past, there was a lot of activity in the city and townships taking properties under their first right of refusal. Last year the city of Jackson alone took 53 tax foreclosed properties, which they can do as stipulated in the statute. The Township of Leone took 13 tax foreclosed properties. Township of Summit took 1 tax foreclosed property. So, all in all, we had over 60 properties that were taken right at the very beginning of the foreclosure process. That's never happened before. So I thought that was important to mention. This here is just the chart that shows we're seeing an decline, I guess you can say, of the total number of foreclosures, which is a very good thing. You can see we peaked at 2012 at 294 parcels, and finally, I think we've hit that high, and we are seeing a decrease. So it went from 294 down to 230 in 2015. So this just shows where those 230 parcels were dispersed throughout the county. It is important to note that the Michigan Department of Treasury has been collecting statewide real property tax, foreclosure, and forfeiture statistics, and Jackson County falls below both the foreclosure rate at the state level and the forfeiture rate. So that's another positive. You can see that Jackson's holding at 9% as compared to the statewide foreclosures rate, which is 17. So I think that's a nice comparison to see what's going on statewide. And here's some dog numbers. These are the numbers that I also provided in the dog license request to the fee structure, but you can see in 2015 we sold 8,211 licenses for a total amount of $80,000 in revenue. Then I talk here about passports and our passports collections. But that's kind of the highlights that I wanted to go through for the annual report, but if there's any specific questions, I'll take those from you.
Karen, in part of the foreclosure process, there's the opportunity for an individual before they've lost their property to go in front of the court. In February, when court hearings were held, how did those numbers of people requesting court hearing compare to previous years? And then, in an overall percentage, how did those rulings play out? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
I believe it does.
Because we've had this conversation before with frustrations some township officials have with these court hearing processes. So
I'm not finding here, but I know that it's in this report. So I believe you're talking about the foreclosure hearing, the judicial foreclosure hearing that happens every February. And we just had ours in the past February, February 26th it was. But to answer your question about the 2015 numbers and where we ended up, when we apply for the foreclosure process, we have to file a petition with the court June 15th of every year. When we do that, so that would have been June 15th of 2014 for the 2015 tax foreclosure cycle. When we do that, it's done at the circuit court level, and a random draw of the judges is done at the circuit court. So I wanted to at least state that because it is random. That's how the circuit court does pick their judges for any of the circuit court matters. What I believe you're concerned about is for the past 3 years, luck would have it that we've had the same circuit court judge preside over the judicial foreclosure hearings, and that would be Judge Wilson. And what happened in 2015 was we had over 80 different taxpayers come for the hearing in February to ask the judge specifically and the court if they could have an extension or time to pay the taxes. And Judge Wilson, I believe, granted all of those taxpayers that did appear and asked the court for an extension to pay. So there has been a very large number of taxpayers that have gone for the foreclosure hearing in February the past 2 to 3 years and have been granted extensions, even if they'd had an extension prior. As the county treasurer, I have no discretion, I have no authority at that February foreclosure judicial hearing. It's totally up to the judge that's been assigned the case to make that call. Specifically, I think you're talking about a property in Hanover, Horton, and we meaning myself and the attorney that represents me at the hearing, try to provide the judge, as a taxpayer is standing up to the podium to explain their situation, we try to give the judge as much information as we can as far as were there any payments made on the extension that they asked for the year prior, have there been any attempts to resolve the situation, and when we provide that information to the judge, again, it's the judge's call whether or not they grant an extension. So as much as we can, we try to provide information, but ultimately it's out of the county treasurer's control. Does that help clarify that process?
Yes, so
February?
this last process that just took place, you were present at that hearing as
Absolutely.
Well?
Yes, and we had, actually Judge LaFlamme was the judge that was randomly drawn the past June for this judicial hearing. And we had over 90 different taxpayers come, and there were a majority of them that were granted extensions.
Okay.
Again, at the judge's discretion.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for the treasurer? Thank you, Karen.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
the report. Next up, we have item 4G, Finance. Welcome, Mr. Latham.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, committee members. First item is the monthly financial statements for January of 2016. Budget benchmark is 8.3%. However, draw your attention to page 2. The 3-year average is 7.9. The actual is 6.1, so we're below the benchmark on the expenditure side, which is good news. Moving ahead to page 3 on the revenue side, the actual is 2.2%. The 3-year average is 2.6, so we're a little bit below the average there, just slightly below. Unless there's any questions, obviously this is the beginning part of the year. Can't look at trends at this point.
Do we have any questions for Jim? Looks good. Thank you. Let me get back to my other page. Next up would be budget amendments, 4G.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is our annual budget amendment with respect to Policy 1040, departmental float, and this is where large departments, that is departments with 500,000 or more in salary and fringes, we make an adjustment to reduce their salary and fringes and transfer that amount into a contingency account to be used for unforeseen events that happened during 2016. So we're asking for an amendment transferring $350,480 into contingency.
Discussion? We have a motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Passes unanimous. One more item, Mr. Latham. That'd be item 4I.
Yes, this is an amendment to the Health Department budget, which increases revenue and expense by $27,572. This covers a number of items, basically changes to how individuals are charged to various departments, and also accounts for additional grant revenue with respect to Ebola and to a lead screening program that the Health Department operates.
Okay, questions or discussions? We have a motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye. 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 Those opposed, the same. Thank you, Jim.
Move to pay bills. Aye.